The #1 worst part about building shipping container homes is structurally reinforcing the floors. Most people building double wide container homes start with 2 normal shipping containers. Then they cut out the sidewalls and create a huge structural problem. These are different. These are full 40-foot open side shipping containers, and they're designed right at the factory to not have a sidewall at all, which means that bottom side rail is huge. So today we're gonna cut the doors off and see if these are the containers that people should have been using for double wide container home kits all along. Stay tuned, hope you learned something. Okay, so let's get right into this and cut these doors off. That's the first step. It's a lot easier to cut the doors off than it is to cut out all the corrugation panels, especially if you're gonna have to go and grind all of the welds that are on there afterwards. So it does make this job a lot easier. And so if you're not a welder, this saves a lot of work for you because you no longer have to add a whole bunch of structure to the floor or to the top header. That's all done for you. And in order to cut these off safely, you just need an angle grinder with a zip disc. And you actually just take your zip blade and you sink it in on the hinge pin, just on the top and the bottom of every hinge, and you work your way across the container. And so the most important safety precaution here is having all of your handles completely latched. That's gonna hold those doors in place. They're not gonna fall until you open those up. Then you can choose the fun way of dropping them. You can either use slings and just lift them up and do it nice and safe, or you can do it like we did, jump inside and sayonara. One thing I really want to try here is just jumping right in the middle of the span and see if I can make this thing vibrate. Kind of does a little bit. I thought it'd be a bit more solid than that. So even with that 16-inch thick floor, it is a little bit shaky. And if that was in the middle of your kitchen or something, you might not like that. So thinking about this now and seeing this now with this little science experiment, you might want a post in your foundation in the middle of that span just to help solidify your floor and the feeling of a nice solid rigid structure that you should get out of a steel structure like this. One other thing is this header up here. A lot of times when we go to a structural engineer, they spec a taller header than that. Let's see. It's like a 6-inch rec tube up there. It looks like a 6x4. That is not what structural engineers want to see. Often in the United States, I hear 4x8 structure. So an 8-inch tall web that spans across an existing structure that's already on there. So that 60mm tubing is what structural engineers spec. And this here only has a 4x6. So it might be a little shy, especially up here in Canada for snow loads and stuff. So what we're gonna do is cut out the doors on the second unit, and then I wanna bring these together and see what this gap looks like once they're together. What would we have to do to fill this all in and make this one solid unit? All right, both of these containers are now snugged up. Let's jump inside. And so now that we've pulled these together, you can actually still see daylight in there. And that's difference is because the corner castings touch and there's a 3mm recession on both corner posts. So there should be a 6mm gap there. So bringing these 2 containers together and having them tight together is a little bit different than our normal double wide kits where we leave 3 inches apart. And that's because we want to put formed metal shapes in between there. But with these, it already has all the metal structure. So we're gonna bring them nice and close together. But still, as you look at it, we got ourselves, I think what's about 8-inch gap in between here. And so what do? One thing that's nice is that the wood floor is flush with this beam. And so all we really have to do is just put in another beam in here or something. And we do have the custom keepers that were made in China. One's missing, I see, but we can use that and probably fold a channel profile, and that would sit right on top of those. And then we could just weld both sides and we'd have a good 2-foot chunk of just pure steel here. One other really cool thing that I noticed on these is normally 40-foot shipping containers at the back end have a gooseneck attachment. It's where they sit on the chassis of a trailer, and there's a hollow recession there, and the floor is really thin. It's only 6 inches thick. And so you got to carve that out and you get a steel plate at the back. Well, with these, they're 16 inches tall. So it does have that gooseneck attachment, but it's way down below, and now we can continue with plywood all the way across. So it's actually a better floor if you were to do a container home. And what you'd probably end up doing here is taking 2 inches of rigid foam and go straight across this, a subfloor, and then your beautiful interior finished flooring afterwards. We went over to our neighbors at Northspan and we asked them if we could borrow a truss or buy a truss, and they're like, oh yeah, you can borrow one, no problem. I'm pretty sure they made this for us specifically, so big thank you to you guys, because you didn't have to do this and I gladly would have paid, but That's what neighbors are for, I guess. Thanks, guys. All right, so we have these truss brackets that we often sell, and they allow you to set trusses across 2 containers. Typically, you'd span them apart and you'd utilize that space in between. But you can also use a truss to run across 2 containers that are right snugged up together. And on a normal container, you can actually put these on the container ahead of time, kind of back to back, and you can set the trusses, and then the center of the bottom cord there can be pinned in, and you can utilize that truss to hold your building up or hold the roof up. And potentially that can also be a weldless way of avoiding adding all that steel just in regular containers. But we're not talking about those right now. We got these 2 open sides, and we're just gonna hold these up on that top 60mm tubing and set that truss in there. And then that's gonna show you guys what it will look like if you wanna put a peaked roof on top of something like this. Will, you good at catching or what? Whoa, bad throw. This right here is the closest that I've ever got to building a shipping container home. We've got 1 truss on top of this double wide shipping container, and it's set in with our wood truss brackets. These things are really cool, and this whole thing's working out a lot better than I actually thought it would. It's really nice to see a 412 pitch finally on top of these, because that's a proper pitch. That's what's actually gonna shed the snow in the winter time, and any kind of monsoon rain. It is gone. You can extend this beyond the edges of the building, have yourself some eaves troughs, and then really control the runoff water. And so this is the right way to build homes. We already know that. That's how all homes are built. Why aren't container homes built the same way? So now that we've laid this truss on top of this double wide shipping container, we figured we'd try some treated wood. So we got a lot of people that want us to make container patios, and typically they just want 1 container. And that's not a bad idea, because with these truss brackets, you can actually extend out. And so even if you have an 8-foot container, you can go 12 feet of deck on top of there, or you could go 20. And potentially these 2 containers, they're just for storage. They're not cut out in between. It's not a double wide. You're not living inside of there. And then you can put these truss brackets in 4 different places, and you can get away with a 2x6. But if you are trying to span that full 16 feet, we already know by local deck code that the 2x6 doesn't work. Just all we had laying around the yard. So one other unique thing that we came up with here on this build is a different way of framing from the outside edges of a shipping container. And so it really involves 3 pieces. We've got a starter piece, and so there's just this awkward gap between the corner casting and where we want to begin, where the corrugations start patterning. And then there's just 2 other pieces. So we've got something to deal with water getting back through the lower corrugations, and then we've just folded a Z profile. And so with this, it's got a bunch of bolt holes in the front. And that is gonna allow us to thread cutting bolt with our 5/16 right into this 60mm tubing. And that gets us a nice flat sill plate. So now this mimics a basement or potentially a footing or something that you're gonna be building off of directly. And whether you wanna put a sill seal underneath here, your first layer of treated, and then start framing a wall. And who knows how high you can go up here. You can at least have 1 more level on top of this, and 2 more if this was a basement, whatever. Talk to your local engineer. And then if for some reason we're actually going to utilize this and go the other direction, so you wanted a flat roof of a shipping container and then a peaked roof or a Quonset arch in between the 2 containers, water could get in underneath this thing. And so that's where this comes in. So it's got slotted holes and allows you, as the corrugations maybe wave a little bit, to adjust it. And then we just go and caulk all the way around and hope that the water that's sitting on this flat roof goes that way. Here's something that's interesting. I'm not even in the middle of the container. He wobbles quite a bit, and so that clearly isn't strong enough to handle snow load on here. As the snow piles up, it just gets heavier and heavier and heavier, and it just slowly droops more and more and more, and you're gonna have yourself a nice swimming pool on your upper level of your container home. And so there is a little gap here. Let's measure it. It's a 1/2 inch, which is interesting because we could potentially sleeve an I-beam or something in between there and weld the bottom part of the flange to the structural beams that are underneath there and have the web come up through, and then your top flange. And that could be something that you could set trusses or something on as well. And so there's options, even just flat bar by itself. So if you just got an 8-inch flat bar or something and you just set it right in here and welded both sides, who knows, gusseted it, something. But there needs to be additional web on this 40 feet if you're planning on keeping a flat roof and having that be your only roof. So this was a rare opportunity for us to try out these 2 40-foot open side shipping containers and put them together to see what it was gonna look like as a double wide. And I think a lot of people should lean this way because they are way more structural and they handle the biggest problem of shipping containers as double wides. They have a 16-inch thick floor. That is massive, and that totally helps get you started on the right track, because most people forget about the most important part, and that is the floor of these things. So I hope this video is very helpful for you and gave you some inspiration and to see what it looks like with trusses on top of shipping containers. I know this sparked a lot of guys here, and potentially it's going to change the way that we do some of our mods in the future. And so if you want to help us out, please give the video a like or check us out at tcg.ca. Hope you learned something.